evening, gentlemen. I am Sneha Jha, editor of ETCIO, and it is my honor and privilege to welcome you all to the SolarWinds Roadshow, brought to you by ETCIO in association with SolarWinds. Today's roadshow is focused on the theme, The Journey to Full Stack Observability for Digital Enterprise. This event is a confluence of IT leaders and digital practitioners from across industry verticals. It is very heartening to see so many of you here. I appreciate you taking out the time to be with us this evening. Today's agenda includes a series of keynotes and industry talk sessions, which are led by subject matter experts who will facilitate deep dive conversations on critical topics around observability. We also have a power-packed panel discussion, which will give you actionable perspectives and insights on how to hit and get successful with observability in a flourishing digital business environment. As the attendees, you will benefit from the in-depth discussions, candid feedback, peer-to-peer networking, and the opportunity for one-on-one engagement with industry experts. But before we kickstart the session, let me set the context for this evening. Now, digital is front and center to the operations of all enterprises today. And as the IT and application environments increasingly move towards complex cloud-based microservices, it becomes difficult to harness and derive insights due to the complexity. The resilience of your applications, infrastructure, logs, databases, networks, and digital experiences should be a top priority in today's day and age. Observability can help you get it right. Now, Gartner predicts that by 2024, 30% of the enterprises will implement observability techniques if they have distributed system architectures to improve the digital business service performance of their company. The top trends driving observability are the need for risk mitigation, better customer experience, cloud-native application architectures, and the adoption of open source technologies. Observability will soon become a critical component of corporate competitiveness. By 2026, 70% of the organizations that successfully apply observability will achieve shorter latency for decision-making and enable competitive advantage for target businesses or IT processes. Observability across applications, infrastructure, logs, databases, networks, and the digital experience will help organizations spend more time innovating and less time troubleshooting. Today we have with us industry practitioners who've been there and done that for their customers. And they are here to help you with their insights and real-world scenario planning. I'd rather you heard from them than me. So, gentlemen, I'd now like to call upon stage Sudhakar Ramakrishna, CEO for SolarWinds. Sudhakar Ramakrishna joined SolarWinds as the president and CEO of the company in January 2021. He is a global technology leader with nearly 25 years of experience across cloud, mobility, networking, security, and collaboration markets. He most recently served as the CEO of Pulse Secure. Sudhakar has also held senior leadership roles at Citrix, Polycom, Motorola, and 3Com. Sudhakar will set the stage and provide the roadmap for all of you to follow. Gentlemen, please give it up for Sudhakar Ramakrishna. Good evening, Sudhakar. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening.
All yours.
Thank you. Thanks again, and good evening, everyone. I know it's been a long day for most of you, so we really sincerely appreciate on behalf of all of us at SolarWinds for joining us today. I also want to take a second to thank the organizers and my team for bringing us all here together. We have planned a really exciting event. Sudarshan, in a few minutes, will give you a really good and deep perspective on what it takes to prepare for observability in the enterprise world as your digital transformation needs accelerate. And then I'm also looking forward to the panel discussion that's going to be coming up fairly soon. I thought I'll take a few minutes to set context as to how SolarWinds has been evolving. Since the time I joined SolarWinds about 2 years ago, I've been coming to India at least twice a year, and in many cases, attempting to come 3 times and as many times as my team here wants me. What really excites me, and Ish, our board member, and I were talking about this yesterday, is the level of digital transformation that's happening in India is unparalleled anywhere, compared to anywhere and anything in the world. And that is incredible and exciting because the scale at which it is happening is just not being seen anywhere in the world. And I doubt we will see that level of innovation in services, innovation in applications, innovation in attitudes anywhere else in the world. So this is something that I personally take a lot of pride in. And I look forward to coming back here because every time I come here, I learn something new. And what it allows me to do is enable us at SolarWinds to be nimble and focused on markets across the world. Specific to India, and I appreciate all of you supporting SolarWinds, one thing I constantly hear about when I meet customers is, I've been working with your products for 8 years, 10 years, 15 years, and I really like those products. But what I also take particular joy in highlighting is how we are transforming to support your needs, and hopefully you'll see some of that transformation happen here today. The other reason I come to India on a repeated basis, not just to support our customers and partners here, but is also to learn. As I think about the global enterprise and the digital transformation that's happening in the global enterprise, many of the requirements for what the global enterprise needs are being defined in India. And so you are in a very, I would say, influential and powerful position in the world market to help the world become a better place in digital transformation and critically a more safe place in the world of digital transformation. So this has been our journey over the last 20 years. Many of you may know us as the leader in network performance monitoring. Over the years, what we have been doing is not just stay to our knittings of network performance monitoring, but we have added systems, databases, application monitoring as well. And so the question now becomes, what do you do with it to support and accelerate the transformation needs of our customers in an increasingly multi-cloud world, which is also becoming increasingly complex? Just to give you a sense for the scale and scope of who we are, 498 of the Fortune 500 customers are our customers. So we have earned the trust of pretty much every one of the Fortune 500 customers, and we have a very large base of over 300,000 customers worldwide. And so what we try to do is not only serve and continue to earn the trust of these customers on a daily basis, but also find ways of identifying common themes across these customers and serve their needs. The other thing that I'm extremely proud of is we have more than 185,000 community members. We call them the TWAC community. Many of you are here. In fact, some of our partners, in fact, ETCIO, they used to be part of TWAC, and they still contribute significantly to our community, where we are learning from the community of users in terms of how to make our solutions better. So as we started thinking about where we want to take SolarWinds, and how should we posture and what should our priorities be, I first started defining the purpose of SolarWinds. And we define our purpose as the need to enrich the lives of the people we serve. And so this is something that I'm deeply committed to, and it's a deeply personal thing. So when we think about the people we serve, that obviously includes our employees, our customers, our partners, and our communities. So when we think about enriching, it's a deeply personal thing in terms of what enrichment means to each one of you. So from an employee standpoint, it could be something like learning new technologies, or in some cases, let's say in our sales teams, making more money because of selling our solutions. That's how we enrich them. When it comes to customers, what I have increasingly found in this increasingly complex digital world is giving back productive hours to you is a way of enriching your lives. So one of the ways I think about SolarWinds and our solutions going forward is how do we give back productive hours to you? And that is central to our value proposition of time to value. If we give you better time to value, better time to identify issues in your environment, better time to remediate them, we are enriching your lives. So reducing your complexity, increasing your productivity, reducing your cost is enriching customers. Obviously, with our partners, it is giving them compelling solutions, compelling enablement to serve our joint customers better together. And last but not least, probably the one area that I'm most proud of at SolarWinds is we are an incredibly profitable company. We are growing. However, we look at the broader community in terms of what we do to support and enable our community. So unfortunately, there's a lot going on in the world. Not all of it is positive. But when there are challenges in the world, everyone at SolarWinds rises up to support those communities. And so that's what we mean by enriching the lives of the people we serve. Today, it'll be about customers in terms of what are we doing to enrich the lives of your customers and how do we do it. Now, as we thought about our strategy going forward, you saw the way we have evolved over the years. And a lot of times we have evolved over the years through point products and a combination of point products. However, to support your needs into the future, both now and into the future, and to support both known needs and unknown needs that might arise in the future, we decided to take a platform approach. We call it the SolarWinds platform. The SolarWinds platform is the basis for all innovation going forward at SolarWinds. And to give you flexibility, the way we think about this is, first of all, it's a platform that is secure by design. Secure by design is a foundational set of principles that I defined back in January of 2021, and that forms the basis for everything that we do. And our brand promise is simple, powerful, and secure solutions. So as we think about how we deploy, we recognize that most of you have needs that are both hybrid, and in some cases you may have complete SaaS native requirements. So the platform is capable of supporting both in a hybrid fashion as well as SaaS. And so what are the capabilities that we deliver on it? We spoke a lot about observability during the introduction, and you'll hear more about that from Sudarshan. But the way to think about SolarWinds is we are a platform that uniquely combines observability and service management. ITSM is the common referred term. We'll be the only vendor that does it. And we have a very strong, powerful portfolio of database monitoring. So at a high level, think of SolarWinds as participating in three large growing market segments: database and data performance management, service management and ITSM related capabilities, and observability. But the reason why they are important together is we not only want to provide you the ability to observe your environments, but we want to help you automate them, observe them, visualize, and to the degree that there are issues in your environment, to automatically remediate them. So it's a full cycle and full capability set that we deliver. And then when we think about observability at SolarWinds, we're not typically thinking about the regular application observability, which is a combination of logs, traces, and metrics. We are observing networks, we are observing databases, we are observing systems, users, and things. And by correlating all of those, we are able to provide you the best value. And so the reason why you see a transformer toy here is my aspiration for SolarWinds is by foundationally building a platform, we not only serve your needs today, but in the future, as your needs evolve, our platform is fungible, similar to a transformer toy, where we can transform it very, very quickly, and through that process, give you the best time to value when you buy our products, the best time to identify issues when you deploy our solutions in your environment, and through automation, orchestration, and remediation, the best time to remediate issues in our environment. That's our promise to you, and that's how we hope to enrich your lives through our solutions. So again, I wish to thank you very much for coming here in full force. My job was really to set up Sudarshan and discuss observability in greater detail. Thank you, and hope you have a great evening today with us.
Thank you so much, Sudhakar. I think that was a very interesting, inspiring, and insightful keynote presentation where you spoke about SolarWinds customer focus, your single-minded focus on the time to value, time to remediate, and the brand promise of SolarWinds. I would now like to call upon stage Sudarshan Narayanan for the industry presentation. Sudarshan leads the DevSecOps Advisory, Managed Services and Solutions as a part of the EY India's cybersecurity practice. Sudarshan's primary focus involves conceptualizing a feasible and risk-based model of continuous security implemented for product teams by identifying bottlenecks and addressing them before integrating security into the development lifecycle while remaining agile. So, gentlemen, please welcome Sudarshan Narayanan. Take it away, Sudarshan.
Thank you, Snehal, for that introduction. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's definitely a privilege and honor to be here to speak to you about a very pertinent and important technology aspect that is, relevant for companies that are on their way for their digital transformation. And special thanks to Mr. Sudhakar, the sponsor of this event, and ETCIO for making these arrangements. It's definitely, as part of the technology fraternity, this concept is certainly one of the things that I have been trying to advocate for, during my interactions with various clients from various sectors. So again, I'm really thrilled to be given this opportunity to talk about what observability is, how it plays out in the modern technology context, and what are the kind of things that organizations and product engineering teams and enterprises should look at when they look at observability as a concept, and how do they kind of leverage it as part of their digital transformation. All right, so let's start this conversation with something very obvious. Now, it's no secret that applications and their architecture has evolved over a period of time with the advent of technological innovations that happen in the space of computing. You do see that the general architecture of applications have moved from a monolithic, single plane sort of an approach towards more distributed microservices based architectural patterns, for the simple reason that by adopting a monolithic architecture, you will have to have a lot of time spent on integrating individual streams of codes or individual teams working together to build out features and eventually bringing them together into a single working product that allows you to ship features to your customers. In contrast to that, if you look at the microservices architecture, it allows you to compartmentalize the features that you would want to roll out and does not underpin the technological development to one particular language or technology stack. And those advantages definitely have a great implication in terms of business teams being able to leverage that flexibility, that ability to be able to run to the market or get to the market much faster than the way they used to do it in the previous iterations or in the previous years, right? So, and with the advent of cloud and the adoption of cloud at the rate at which it's going, it's no brainer that people now are obviously choosing to go with microservices based architectures. But having choosing or going with that sort of an architecture has its own set of challenges, and that's something that we will be looking at. And before we talk about observability in detail, let's look at some of these challenges and how they resonate with the industry leaders and the audience, right? So as I talked about application modernization in terms of adopting microservices architecture, one of the things that you will definitely notice is that existing tool sets have certain limitations in terms of how they are able to collect signals and provide them some sort of an actionable intelligence for operations teams or development teams or security teams to be able to react as quickly as they would want to. But the tools themselves are at some point becoming a sort of an Achilles heel, to put it very lightly. So what happens is that you will need to start looking at tool sets and ways in which you can collect intelligence that will help you to be much quicker and nimble in terms of being able to react to the problems. Subsequently, if you look at the whole cloud adoption journey, comparing it with your traditional on-premises based applications, definitely given that you are moving into a more OpEx based model, product teams always try and dabble with adopting new technologies that will help them to spin up new servers or spin up new database instances, and they can pay as they use. So that's a great sort of incentive for people to start looking at cloud. But the real challenge comes when you start looking at applications to scale, especially when you have applications that are facing from the problem statement you would have for 1,000 user application is much different to a 10,000 user application. And obviously, when you go to 100,000 or 1,000,000 users, you will have to deal with issues at scale. And at that point in time, you will not be able to optimize your cost unless you know how to do it, and unless you have the inherent intelligence for you to be able to know how can I optimize my compute environments so that I can reduce the cost of running or spinning up so many servers at scale. Those sort of conscious choices engineering teams will, and operations teams and business teams will have to start looking at. And with the whole adoption of cloud, one of the underlying issues that you see is the whole question around security. Because with a more cloud native application, the reality is that you are moving towards a more software defined network, software defined environment, which means most of the infrastructure that is going to host your applications are also going to be written as code. So which means you will have to deal with infrastructure as code to spin up instances. You will have to deal with policy as code to manage the ways you are, the way in which you are enforcing policies from a restrictive perspective. You will also have to deal with identity as code in terms of dealing with being able to create the right level of authentication and authorization systems to be able to cater to your applications, especially when you are dealing with public facing applications. You obviously cannot keep building your own custom authentication and authorization systems, because it's, from an engineering point of view, it is very, very costly to be able to do, and you wouldn't want to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, right? So, and finally, as we are talking about cloud native applications, with the advent of containers and Kubernetes clusters, you are going to definitely see a lot more decentralized distributed systems to deal with, which means you will have to have different set of metrics, you will have to have different set of logs to look out for, to know what exactly is the problem that you're trying to anticipate, and therefore how do you go about treating it from a risk mitigation strategy. So having said all that, want to kind of look at observability from a first principles perspective and try and understand basically what observability is. And if you look at it, just like we talked about the evolution of application architectures moving from a monolithic to a microservices sort of an architecture, you are looking at observability, which is basically the culmination and evolution of logging and monitoring systems in the modern context. So which means you are basically building and underlying capabilities of logging, monitoring, that will help you to take actionable intelligence, because it is able to contextualize the business requirements for your applications. And that ultimately is what a true observability solution should help you to achieve. Because the reason why you are trying to look at going for observability is because, for whatever reasons, your traditional monitoring systems are right now not cutting the mustard, so to speak, right? So therefore, we will also have to look at what are the fundamental building blocks when it comes to an observability solution. It's ultimately built on things that it collects in the form of logs, logs that could come out of your networking devices, logs that could come out of your compute environments, logs that could come out of your identity perimeter systems, or logs that could come out of your application servers that are rendering the business logic for you. But then you should not be able to, or rather you should not be looking at them as individual silos, but you will have to contextualize all of them in the in the perspective of what kind of risk and impact does it have on your line of business. Secondly, the metrics is the metadata that you would derive in terms of trying to understand the environments that are running or hosting your applications. What are the kind of data it is showing? So what would be the user usage patterns? How much of a spike in network traffic are you seeing in a certain period of time of the year? What is the level of CPU percentage consumption for your applications at a certain for a certain module? So it could mean a lot of these things. So these are the values that you would use to determine what to do, and that's something that is very, very essential in terms of collecting from an observability standpoint. And finally, this is a very, very underrated topic, given the fact that with more distributed and decentralized systems, it would have a greater connotation in terms of understanding, not just from a performance point of view, but also from a security point of view, which is the distributed tracing. This would be a collection of trace events, application snapshot events that will help you to contextualize how data is moving within your cluster, across your cloud estate, and what could be seemingly considered as a malicious event. That is the sort of events, or that is the sort of data you will need to be able to determine in a modern application on what really constitutes a breach or what really constitutes an anomaly, right? So all of these data ultimately has to feed into the various sections within an observability solution, wherein you will have one section that particularly focuses on security and troubleshooting. So in the event of a breach or in the event of an attack, my apologies, I'm a little under the weather, but the idea is for you to know what exactly has transpired in your application stack and what you should do about it. Secondly, the analytics to try and understand what is the usage pattern for your users, what are the ups and downs or the ebbs and flows of your application, and how do you go about scaling your application to cater to the need of the kind of compute that you need. Excuse me. And finally, telemetry in terms of collecting the required data for you to be able to determine how packets are flowing within your system, how user interaction is flowing within your system and your applications. All of this collectively should be able to contextualize your data and provide you the required information for you to take on the decisions that you need. And how this translates into the use cases that would make a lot of sense from a customer's point of view is these top three factors. I'm not saying that these are the only factors, but these are the top three factors that would make a lot of sense for customers to go for an observability solution. So to start with, you will have a better visibility into the system. So let's say if you are deploying a Kubernetes cluster, you are going to deal with a lot of microservices. You have to deal with the Kubernetes system itself, irrespective of whether it is a managed Kubernetes service or a Kubernetes service that you're running on your own data center. So you will need to know at every level, at a cluster level, at a namespace level, at a pod level, at a container level, what are the kind of data points that I'm collecting? And what am I doing with it? What should I do with it? All of this data is a lot more easier when you have an observability platform, because a traditional SIM is not catered for being able to take all of this data and contextualize it from a business perspective. Secondly, in terms of root cause analysis, to understand what exactly was the reason for a performance bottleneck. What was the reason for an attacker to laterally move into your system? How was an attacker able to fetch an endpoint that was not protected or is leaking information through its APIs? This sort of data is something that you will be able to collect when you leverage an observability solution, because it contextualizes and it is very tightly coupled with the underlying infrastructure that you have enabled it with. And finally, from a SOC perspective, when you are running SOC teams and trying to understand how network operations or security operations are going on, you will be able to have a better visibility in terms of what could happen or what attack could compromise your application. And even if it happens, what would be the level of exposure that you would have? And this is very, very relevant in the modern context, specifically because modern applications leverage a lot of open source components. So your software supply chain is equally vulnerable as your application. This is very evident from the most recent attack in the Log4j compromise. By many people actually brought down their applications even though they were not directly actually compromised by it, meaning that an attacker would not be able to actually exploit a shell or a remote shell on their applications. But because of the sheer panic that they had Log4j in their systems, many applications, many teams that I have known personally have brought down their applications just to prevent themselves from any potential or possible attack. But if you have taken the concepts of a DevSecOps way of doing things by incorporating secure by design, ensuring that you have the right signals to look for, and having an observability solution as part of your stack, then the level of confidence you will have in your own application stack would be much higher. And this is attributed by the data points that is shown in the right half of the screen, where you see that between two groups of adopters, where one could be called as the leaders and the other could be called as the beginners, both groups have obviously seen a greater deal of improvement in terms of their numbers with regards to, let's say, the confidence that they have in their own internal systems, the visibility that they have into their own application posture, and so on and so forth, right? So this is a very, very compelling use case for most product teams to look at considering observability solutions. And in terms of when the rubber hits the road, an observability solution ultimately has to have two compelling viewpoints in terms of what it delivers for you. So one would be definitely the unknown knowns, wherein you know certain parameters are critical for you. And if you see that those parameters are exceeding a certain threshold, you know that this could be a potential problem. So therefore, you are able to take corrective action based on that. But then there are certain unknowns in the industry, such as zero-day attacks or malware attacks, where you have absolutely no control over such type of events. But then your system should be able to help you to give you the right indicators to know if this could be a potential problem, right? That is where the leverage of observability solutions will definitely help give DevOps and DevSecOps teams the fighting chance to be able to put up with attackers. And finally, I'd like to talk about the benefits of having an observability system as part of some of the practices that I have seen. Is right off the bat, you definitely see that you have better control in terms of the ability to monitor your applications. It also has implications and second order effects in terms of being able to identify root cause much better, much faster. So this means that the amount of time that you spend or your developers spend in investigating issues and rather spending them in productive work, like building new features or building new making bug fixes, that sort of stuff is better use of their time. And then from a security point of view, you are also able to understand and define what sort of threats that you're looking for, because the observability solutions offer you the capability to be able to mention what kind of threats are you specifically looking for. So for example, as part of your API list of requests, if you say that this particular API call, if it gets such a type of payload, like say a cross-site scripting or a SQL injection, you right away flag it to the ops teams to know that this particular user has tried to provide a malicious payload, and that's something that you will need to definitely look into. And this sort of flexibility is something of a shortfall with traditional monitoring systems, simply because the technologies that they are underlying support are not able to extend that sort of a feature functionality. But then obviously they would also be making inroads into this sort of a thing. But from a DevSecOps way of doing things, this is a very integral element of knowing that across the SDLC, the software developmental lifecycle, you need to have tools and solutions in place that will help you to create feedback loops so that you have a better visibility of your entire application landscape. And that has to scale across the hundreds or thousands of applications that you might have, or you might have in the future as well, right? So with this, I would probably conclude my presentation saying that observability is a very, very relevant and a key use case from a larger technological adoption connotation. And I would definitely say that product engineering teams that have a very forward-looking sort of a mindset will look at embracing this as part of their arsenal and portfolio of solutions and their IT landscape. And with that, I would like to conclude my keynote and thank you all for this opportunity. You all have been a very nice and patient audience. And thank you once again. Good night.
Thank you so much, Sudarshan. I think that was a very comprehensive overview of what observability means to the digital business and what are some of the ways in which you can get it right and use it as a competitive differentiation for your company. And that is a perfect segue into our next segment this evening. So we will now move on to the most interactive session of this evening, which is a panel discussion, a power-packed one at that. The topic for this discussion is delivering business value with unified observability. And to take this discussion further, may I invite upon stage our esteemed panelists. Gentlemen, please give a thunderous round of applause to our panelists. They are Manish Kishore, Global Head IT, Wokhard Limited. Sudhir Kanvinde, CIO, Supreme Industries. Abhijit Chakravarti, Senior Vice President, Core Networks, HDFC Bank. Tejas Shah, Head IT Applications, Prince Pipes and Fittings. Vivek Zakarde, Senior Vice President, Head Analytics, RACC IndusInd Bank. Arvind Kurapati, Senior Director, Sales, ASEAN and India, SolarWinds. And Deepak Joshi, SVP, Head Operations, Technology and Compliance for Motilal Oswal Wealth. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel discussion. Thanks for taking out the time to be here. Now, as we heard in the keynote session, we are seeing that the technology landscape is getting more complex, more distributed. The security threat landscape is getting more amorphous. So it is very critical for organizations to have an end-to-end visibility into their modern tech stack. And this is critical not just because for the reasons of security, but also for amping up the customer experience, digital experience, also be able to get a single pane of glass across the different elements of the infrastructure and to be able to give correlated output for each of these. So here in this panel discussion, we'll try and understand what unified observability means to all of you in your own business context. How are you trying to advance your observability posture? And what are some of the areas in which you think that your vendor or solution provider for observability could help you achieve that observability posture? So we'll start with you, Mr. Kanvinde. You represent Supreme Industries, which is India's largest manufacturer of plastic and processing companies. So, for you, it's very critical in the manufacturing context to have quality control, predictive maintenance. You also have a huge setup of IoT devices, so efficiency for those things is critical. Now, when we talk about observability, it's mostly in the technical sense, but in a business sense, how do you see it translate into business value?
Yeah, it's very important for any manufacturing company because current and future demands cannot be met with legacy system or legacy processes. So we need to make sure that our entire landscape is monitored. And as Mr. Nagarajan in his presentation, he gave advantages. So what I see is what basically CIO or digital leader wants is whatever log, traces, matrices, if something can be married together and give us information about what is happening. So for manufacturing sector with 28 locations, it's very difficult to monitor SCADA systems. It's very difficult to get through logs individually. So if that is married and give us information about what is, where it's happening, where there's a issue, then very easy for CIO or digital leader to address that particular solution. So what is happening is in manufacturing sector, not only IoT, but also our supply chain, how fast we can reach to our customer, that is also important. So for manufacturing, what I see advantages or usability of this solution is predictive maintenance, at the same time quality control. And if we achieve this, performance will go up. And that is something we are targeting at this point.
Absolutely. I think one point that comes across very clearly is that you don't just need logs and matrices, you also need to be able to correlate it to create action points, actionable insights to understand where the issues are, what issues could crop up, and how to resolve those issues. And ultimately, it boils down to that in terms of getting the action points that are relevant in your business context. Now, I'd like to move on to Mr. Zakade. From a banking perspective, banks have been at the forefront of digital transformation. The customer expectations from the banking companies, banks are very high in terms of anytime, anywhere banking, while also being able to secure their data, the PII information. So when you're looking at meeting all of these business objectives, you also have to ensure that your platforms, your systems, your processes are resilient, they perform at a good speed. You also have to ensure the stability and security. So what are some of those concerns that you might have when it comes to lack of observability? If you don't really have an observability into all of these critical elements, how do you think your bank would suffer? What are some of the concern areas?
Hi, good evening all. Uh, so basically we all know that there are three pillars of observability is logs, metrics and traces. Uh, but you know that in a banking or if any company, there is a multi-layer clouds, multi-clouds are there. The legacy systems are very complex. And understanding these things, it's very tough to get into the get these kind of observability tool to have give some advantage to the industry. Again, you have your infrastructure in the silos. Other teams, most of the teams work in the silos. Like bank, they are normally larger on the size, so each department work like their own company. Getting all into a one silo systems or getting all into a one same room is a quite tough and challenging for us. So considering all, it's very tough for us to have these kind of a single tool where we can get all this data and then think about do something new. Again, we are bound to many regulations and compliance are there. So there's a tough for us and it's quite challenging for us. Again, we need to also understand that observability, there is a difference between observability and monitoring. Still, we are more focused on the monitoring. We are not getting into the observability. What exactly we are getting from that. So that mindset need to be changed.
Right, absolutely. There has to be collaboration amongst different departments, and you raised a very valid point of legacy and silos. I'd like to take it to Mr. Kishore now. Mr. Kishore, you're from the healthcare and pharma segment. You also deal with a lot of legacy systems. You also have the issue of silos, just the way Mr. Zakaria was mentioning. And it's difficult for you to then be able to take a latest observability tool and to get your legacy systems to support it. So while you're dealing with those ground realities, how do you go about improving your observability posture to ensure that your business doesn't have any risks in terms of loss of business, loss of revenue, compromised customer experience, or data leakage, security breaches? How are you trying to tackle these challenges and yet ensure that your observability posture remains good?
Sure. So good evening to all. So probably the observability is a new name, probably what we are hearing. We have been looking at KPIs, metrics for each of the systems that we have been monitoring a lot. But I think good thing with observability which is coming is you have a tool which can analyze and give you kind of a results. I think that was a missing piece, which we miss in our day-to-day operations of IT, where we look at systems like legacy systems, like Sudhir said, of manufacturing. We have a lot of SCADAs and PLCs where we collect the data through historians and then we keep analyzing all those data. And these are all time series data, so you have to act fast. So what is your remediation time? I think that is what important in terms of manufacturing specifically. But at the same time, we'll have to look at the shelf life of those. So there are manufacturing where the shelf life is more. Pharma and healthcare where it is very less and it has to be taken care. So from the time the raw material came to the time it reaches the end consumer of it, you will have to monitor everything what is happening, starting from the warehouse to manufacturing to the transport delivery system. How do we monitor all those things? Are the alerts being generated? So we go for different tools together, that this is monitoring my IoTs at the manufacturing, this is for the transport or logistics, and this is for this. There's no unified thing across that we are looking at. So I think that there is a need of solution which we can have one view all across and we can act upon. But in silos, when we develop a lot of applications for it, in pharma specifically, we have a lot of regulation around. So we'll have to see that we comply to it. And that's the reason, with the lack of regulation around, we don't upgrade our systems. So that's how the legacy systems are there. So we don't get investments into the old systems across. Now, how do we get it? Today, if I go for a new software, does it support the old legacy systems? How does it pull the logs from it? I think that is very important tool. So what we do is we are T-1 or T-2, we take out the dump and then we analyze. So the lead time for remediation is very, very high, where we don't get the analysis at the right moment. So when we don't get it, there is an opportunity or there is a lost opportunity for the batch loss. Manufacturing which is happening that we can lose because we are not doing all the preventive maintenance accordingly. So we depend on those systems, AI systems, where we keep the logs, we analyze and maintain it further. But that is site specific. Now, how do you maintain that all your manufacturing sites across different geographies are maintained together? And we look at those logs. I think that is what we look at and ensure in terms of manufacturing of it. But at the internal space, when we look of lot of applications that we did, I think I liked what ENY showed about the DevSecOps. Now, how do you containerize all your applications? That is very important. Different microservices, how do you secure them? So there is a lot of push and pull services that is happening from the APIs. Now, how do you ensure that those are not security risks? How do you encrypt the data? How do you monitor it? Specifically from the database in and out. So you create a staging, a quality, a development, and a production server for this. That's how the containerized approach or DevSecOps work together for complete orchestration of the whole software management. But where it is monitored, it is not monitored. It is just analyzed at the end of the week or at the project milestones together. So I think that is very important tool which I think we should look at what benefits we are getting. So how much manpower we are spending, how much time we are spending on observing the logs, and what are the human errors we do while observing all those logs. So we have a data scientists who work on different logs and analyze and give us the result. But please analyze that confidence level is low initially, and you will gain it after a lot of trials and errors on different algorithms. I think that is important. I think that is two things that I wanted to highlight.
Right. So now you also raised this very critical point about the complexity in the manufacturing setup. The legacy contributes to that complexity, and then the regulations and the need for constant monitoring, the need to do it at scale. All of these things contribute to the challenges that are around observability. Now, I'd quickly like to move on to Mr. Chakravarti. Now, Mr. Chakravarti, any digital business has these three pillars of customer experience, employee productivity, and the digital infrastructure. And as these three critical pillars of a digital business are important, as a digital bank, how should banks adopt a platform approach to centrally bring together the monitoring data of these three pillars so that they can ensure visibility, actionable insights, and the economies of scale as well?
Thank you for that question. Now, so you highlighted a point. Let me try and answer that with a very easy example, which all of us would have experienced for sure. All of us use smartphones. Hence, I am assuming that all of us would use mobile banking. Okay, when you log into the mobile banking app, what's your experience? Good, bad, ugly? Could be. Some days could be good, some days could be very good, some days could be ugly. Now, why is that happening? You spoke about customer experience. Now, why is that happening? What went wrong? Now, visibility, observability. See, you've got to have the capability in the platform to look at monitoring, reporting, correlating different parameters across packets, across flows, across sessions. It's not just one, okay? Now, when I logged into a mobile banking, and if I am to kind of simulate that situation, was my mobile network poor? Was my device poor? Now, any application would have a web app and a DB layer to it. Who malfunctioned? Can I trace that session live? Can I set up a process wherein I can simulate this and report it to a operations or an application support team saying that, gentlemen, in the last 5 simulated traces that I made, 7 went bad. And this 7 went bad because between the app and the DB responded slow. This is observability. It will give you pinpointed where you are going slow. You've got to go and find out. Now, let's go a step ahead. Why did the DB respond slow? What is it inside the DB that responded slow? So it's collecting a lot of data, being able to look at packet, as I'm repeating, packet, flows, and sessions all together simultaneously, correlating and giving me an actionable output, or at least giving me a couple of probables that I should look at. Okay, so this is this example I would want to kind of on the customer experience piece that you said. Now on the productivity piece of it, all of us talk about MTTR, mean time to resolve. How do you achieve mean time to resolve? The simple answer is if you are able to detect. Now, if you say that my mean time to resolve is 4 hours, but my mean time to detect itself is 6 hours, hello, where is that 4 hours? And generally, if you do not have that capability, what will happen in large organizations, there are multiple teams, right? Web, app, DB, storage, network, security, all of that, right? Which would mean that you will get 25 people on a call. The loudest guy on the call is always correct, till the time proven wrong. That's how it is. Whether we may accept it or not is, this is the practical thing, okay? And then it goes sequentially. Someone says, I have checked my system. So generally, it starts, everyone is correct, but somehow the system is not working, right? Now, if you do not have visibility and observability, your MTTR is already gone for a toss. Now, MTTR actually, by my standards, is an outdated terminology. We should all look at MTTD. What is your mean time to detect? If you do not detect, what will you do with your MTTR? How will you get your MTTR? It's going nowhere, right? And secondly, with on-premises, you have clouds, you have multi-clouds, you have legacy systems, you have open sources, you have engineered systems like IBM's, Oracle's, and etc., right? You've got to be capable of collecting that data, running the algorithms, giving a correlated output. Now, that's what observability should be capable of delivering. Otherwise, both the customer experience and the productivity that we spoke about, I think, isn't happening. Thanks.
Now, Mr. Shah, very relevant points that you raised there, and also very grounded in the realities of an organization. Now, Mr. Shah, you were 100% on cloud, and you also have a huge IoT setup at your factory level. So how are you, with such a distributed infrastructure environment, how are you looking at observability, and what are some of the ways in which you're trying to deliver visibility, insights, and action in this kind of a complex distributed environment?
See, I think obviously each and every domain has its own way of monitoring the tools and everything, but obviously we need to have 360-degree of view of in a single view. So let's say cloud has their own set of parameters that can be monitored. In IoT device, we have our own softwares which gives us alerts, which gives us a dashboard saying that this are the available parameters. But definitely to make a single platform and to merge everything in one single, you can say a corridor or a slab is what we are looking for. So three core areas which I see for at least for our domain is cloud, second is the IoT device, obviously, and third is our core system, which we can say is our ERP. Obviously, that should have some connectivity, and we should get a single view saying that, okay, this is going wrong, or maybe this is detected and you take an action. And I think IoT and everything is already been covered, but one thing which I would like to also add in is the SaaS-based application which are not in our premises. That is also one thing which we need to look. Obviously, each and every organization must have at least one SaaS-based application which is not hosted at our environment, maybe in the data center or our cloud, but that is hosted at their partner's end. So that is also one thing which has to be have some way of generating overview of getting what all things are happening at their end at well. So that is what I would like to touch upon.
Right. Now, Arvind, one of the themes that is emerging from what our panelists have been talking about is the fact that one of the key challenges of observability tools is to ascertain how much you can see and how much of it is important to you. So to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff and to be able to get actionable insights is what is the ask of all organizations and CIOs. So, because they are facing all of this issue with the data deluge, how can your tool provide that capability to get the actionable insights to then be able to monitor the hardware uptime, the performance and services? How does it help organizations move from elements to services?
Thanks, Neha. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the question. I think we've had obviously a very engaging discussion, right? We covered about the fundamentals of observability, the metrics, traces, logs, and we heard practical challenges in different industries. But one thing, like you rightfully said, the common thing that everybody is facing is complexity, right? And maybe let me, there are two terms that we have been discussing as well, monitoring and observability. Actually, monitoring is a foundation and a subset of observability, correct? The way I would describe is if you think about asking a pilot to fly a plane, okay, and not give him a dashboard, I wouldn't want to get on that plane, correct? So it's all of you IT leaders here and the CIOs here running the operations on a day-to-day basis, you need that visibility, absolutely need that visibility, okay? I've also kind of described to very non-technical people what SolarWinds does and what is the life of an IT operations person. And I said, look, we don't create IT, but we help to operate, right? So they said, oh, you are the Vishnu of IT. Like, so I think I'm trying to paint a picture here, but I would say what's changed is the complexity, okay? Our role here as SolarWinds is the visibility provider, the visibility partner, and to counter that complexity with simplicity, okay? That's what we're trying to do, okay? And a lot of different use cases have been discussed here, but maybe I'll share a couple of practical use cases of what it means to have that smarter dashboard for a pilot, okay? So that the pilot doesn't have to look at 10 different things and draw a conclusion. How can we be smarter and provide that insight so that the things like the mean time to detection, so the first thing is identification, right? And then you resolve. So how can we accelerate that, okay, in this complex world? That's kind of what we do. So a practical use case would be, there was mention of SaaS applications, okay? You don't control that application, you don't control the infrastructure, yet you're responsible for delivering top-notch user experience to users, right? Even for the SaaS application. So what if a employee sitting in your Pune office says that Office 365 is slow? Okay? Was it your network? Was it a choke point in your router? Was it an ISP? Can be any ISP, right? I'm not picking any ISP here, so I'll not say names, right? Or is it the Microsoft data center itself that has a choke point? Okay? So what we are able to do is literally trace every layer 3 device in the path from the Pune office, keep that historically, and tell you exactly that, hey, the problem started at this time, and there was a choke point. Someone made a configuration change on the router, and then that way you know, is the problem within my network? Do I need to call my ISP? Do I need to call Microsoft? Okay? So it's very, very clear next steps so that you know how to take that decision very, very quickly, right? So that's an example of, like you said, how can we help in this complex world, right? Another great example, very close to my heart, right? And this is something that I'll tell my grandkids as well someday, okay? I'm based in Singapore, and prior to leading the business for Asia, I was a solutions engineer, okay? And there is a healthcare services organization in Singapore that provides IT services for all the public hospitals in Singapore, okay? So every now and then, you step into a hospital, patient steps into a hospital, gives the ID, you pull up the patient record, okay? And every once in a while, that system used to freeze for 20 minutes, okay? So we all experience application slowdowns and locking of systems, et cetera, correct? So the head of that services organization, the shared services organization, was warned by the Minister of Health, you have your job as long as no one dies. If anyone dies because the system is taking 20 minutes to load the patient record, you're fired, okay? So they were under severe pressure, and I'm not a database expert, but using our tools, I was able to tell precisely why that patient record system was freezing, because what was happening was there was a daily schedule of uploading of all the information from the various hospitals to a central system. There were about 200 XenApp servers throughout the island. And if the timing was unfortunate, the storage subsystem could not handle the latency, the right latency, and it would go through the roof, right? Because we are able to tell down to the second, this is the problem, and this is how you remediate the problem, right? The tuning advice, and that issue went away, right? But Microsoft Advanced Support was involved, Citrix Advanced Support was involved for months, and we came in and we were able to pinpoint the issue. Me, a non-database expert, was able to pinpoint. That's the simplicity, right? The complexity of the issue, you counter with the simplicity of the solution. So the reason why I'll tell my grandkids is that I saved some lives, and nobody died because of that in Singapore, okay? So that's why I would tell my grandkids, right? So look, I could go on and on about the use cases, but and there's a lot of talk about cloud as well. The big issue right now is the potential sticker shock that you get by going to the cloud, right? There's agility that you get, the microservices, all that architecture is great, but you want a predictable bill from your cloud provider, right, every month. So again, this kind of related to making sure that the applications are performing at their peak in the most optimal level. So we have solutions. So I would say where we are doing is everybody wants to, taking again a different analogy, everybody has a car, everybody wants a Tesla, everybody wants a self-driving car, right? But even if you have the self-driving car, do you have the confidence to hand the steering wheel to that piece of software? Okay? So we all want to get there, but as our goal is for anybody running IT to provide that visibility, make it smarter and smarter with each evolution. Okay? Sorry, long answer, but hopefully that helped.
Thanks, Arvind, for some of those very relevant and contextual, points that you mentioned, use cases there. Now, you touched upon cloud, and I'd like to dig deeper into this aspect with some of our panelists here. Now, Mr. Kanvinde, we've seen that over the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of organizations have started their cloud journey, and it's now become table stakes for most organizations. But when it comes to cloud, there's also this problem of hidden costs and unexpected expenses. So how do you think observability can then help you, track, monitor, and control your cloud costs?
Yeah, so when we move from on-premises to maybe co-location or cloud, CFO will ask about how you're going to, save cost. So CI will answer scalability and performance, but in end of the day, we need to find out how we can save cost. So with observability, if we could get information about how we can reduce cache, how we can optimize cost with power, I think that will help. And better control can be in place when we move on cloud.
Also to be able to, track and monitor your cloud costs, is there anything specific that you can do to obviate the risk of hidden costs?
So hidden cost, see, any application, when we move on cloud, we need to see what is the performance, how we can say, one more advantage what I see after looking at this presentation is in software development, because when you move any application or mobile app on cloud, if there are any performance issues, how you can find out those using this application. So that will directly help in reducing cost. So DevOps is one kind of option where we get, there's a lot of potential I can see here.
Right. Now, Mr. Shah, we've also seen that the cloud environments are increasingly prone to supply chain attacks. How do you deal with that kind of a challenge in a cloud environment, and how do you see observability helping you there?
See, I think to start with, there are two types of, I can say, expenses. One is reserve instance and pay per use. So obviously, on reserved and pay, taking the first point, I am saying that key to ensure that there are saving, which we can see is obviously on the pay per usage, wherein there are unwanted services which are been used, and that has been usually seen in the managed services which we outsource. Obviously, in-source guys will also be monitoring it, but in a managed source, this is what we usually see, and we have in fact experienced it. So in that case, obviously this tool, or you can say the exact usage of every services is been monitored. As far as supply chain is concerned, obviously there are various touch points wherein we need to ensure that all the incoming or outgoing things are being monitored. So I can only see the touch points is what we need to ensure that it has been correctly monitored, and a correct trigger has been pointed out whenever there is any change which happens.
Now, Mr. Chakravarti, we've also seen, and during the keynote session as well, that it's very important to have automation and orchestration along with observability. Now, when it comes to automation and orchestration, what are you doing on that front? How are you enabling your team to then be able to instantly eliminate the false positives, to be able to predict and prioritize problems, to undertake a root cause analysis, to be able to do better anomaly detection in a proactive fashion?
Thank you. So again, so from the system, from the tool, I mean, you get a lot of alerts right now. The capability again of the tool is, or the application is, how do you categorize those alerts and those events, right? Not everything is critical, not everything needs immediate action. So does the tool allow you to categorize them as, critical, major, high, low, medium, whatever, as per the organization's requirement? Now that's point number one. Point number two, how well does this now integrate back to any ITSM and workflow management tools that you have right now? Now, if I'm not able to detect that event and integrate it to a particular ITSM system. Suppose if it's a network alert, high alert, I need to go through, I need this alert to go to the L3 engineers. Now it should go only to the L3 because it's high, right? Now, so this is the way that you kind of, so one is that, the capability of categorizing different alerts, and obviously this will improve over a period of time. You'll never get it correct day one, because this is something that you'll need to keep doing. Now, the other capability is, see, mostly, and I'll not be wrong, and I'm coming from experience, is mostly we would, kind of look at monitoring thresholds breaching. So we say that, CPU, or maybe from a banking perspective, let me give you a more practical example. UPI transactions for us are very, very critical, right? We all are on UPI, right? So for a bank, the UPI transaction is critical. Now, what do we monitor? Do we monitor that our UPI transaction has gone beyond 90% and we should be looking at why that has happened? Yes. I'm also equally interested in monitoring if the UPI transaction has fallen below 30%. I want to know why that has happened. Otherwise, the merchant, which is a Google Pay or a Paytm, would just put my bank off their payment channel and give you an option to pay with some other bank. I lose business. So, capability of monitoring both highs and lows. Okay, the logic built there are different. I've got to be capable of doing it across with the tool. Automation and orchestration. Now, for example, let me take another practical example. An office, let me not go too high, let me say any organization with 50 odd offices connected, you've got 50 odd network routers, okay? And you want to introduce a change which needs 2 line items to be introduced per router. And because of the business needs, you cannot do it during the business hours, you need to do it in the night hours. 50 routers, 2 lines each, 100 lines of commands to be pushed. How do you do that? If you do not have automation, if you do not have standardization. Now, okay, let's say you have done it. How do you get to know how many devices you have done it? And if they have been executed properly, where is the compliance statement? If you don't have it, you're assuming. That can lead you to a very wrong direction, right? So all these are capabilities that I look for when I look for automation and orchestration. So I should be capable of defining a script. Obviously, I'll test it on a few routers on a test environment. I should be able to schedule my activities. I should be capable of tracking how much of that has happened and whether that has effectively happened, and be capable of generating a compliance report out of it. If I cannot do all this, I'm still doing manual tasks. And these are, obviously time consuming, and there will be errors around it. So I hope I've been able to, with an example, be able to answer both automation and orchestration piece of it. Thanks.
Now, Mr. Kishore and also Mr. Zakade, both of you in your previous responses mentioned that investment in orchestration tools is a bit of a challenge. Getting the amount of expenses to pour into this is an issue. So a pricing model is a big challenge for observability tools. What kind of a pricing model would your organization prefer for its observability stack? And I'd like to hear both your views on this.
So it depends pricing model, what ROI you can define from that pricing model, because for us, like we are one of the top 5 banks, and for us, the customer is on utmost priority. We are a custodian of their money, we are custodian of their data to be secured with us. So for us, pricing model, I think it should not be worried about us, because we are there to enhance our customer experience, and we are to be best among the competition. So I don't think pricing model can impact the bigger organizations, but of course for the smaller organizations might be concern for them.
But what kind of a model would you prefer?
So what we look at, if anything ROI we can define from that would be beneficial for us. So if we are happy if we can increase our customer experience, because imagine if a DevOps person is wasting his time to just fix the issue or to understand what's going around him. So if that can be sorted out easily and we can save some time from that, we are good to go with that tools.
So I think there are many angles to pricing when we look at I don't know, I think we'll hear more from Arvind and SolarWinds teams across, is nowadays we go for a SOC center, a NOC center, a different control center for applications. How much we can reduce it from there by putting this observability solution? I think that is what we need to analyze further and see the benefits arising from that. And definitely the FT reduction or all the manpower reduction and the prompt responses and through the alerts and triggers, that paves way for a better equipped operations team. But as a general, I think we would not like to go in a CapEx mode. We would certainly look at a pricing model of our OpEx mode. But when we look for OpEx mode, we look at more at a transaction basis. I think it should be more of what is the solution that we are looking at in the OpEx. What is the optimization of today? I have, let's say, 12 tools, which is doing different things and accumulating those into observability. Can I eliminate it out of this 10 tools and I live with the 2 tools with observability? I think that is where the ROI would come into effect.
Arvind, would you like to share what you're hearing from your customers across verticals on this?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Kishore. I think you made a great point, right? So if you, one is on the model itself, and the other one is how do you build the ROI for based on existing systems and processes, right? So like you said, it may not be one, but if you can reduce 20 to 3 or 100 to 5, that's a big improvement in efficiency and productivity, right? And that's kind of the goal where a lot of our customers look at, in the official term that a lot of people use is tools consolidation. And the advantage is we avoid something called swivel chair integration, where you look at one screen, then you manually look at the next screen and the next screen, and then try to piece together in your brain, whereas use the software to build that intelligence, right? So that's absolutely the number one use case for adoption of SolarWinds. But in terms of the model themselves, right? So one of the things that we have done is put a very concerted effort to simplify our platform and the offerings. Okay? So we essentially have, if you think about it, 2 platforms. One is self-managed. We call it hybrid cloud observability. It's a very simple node-based licensing model. A firewall is the same as a virtual machine as a switch or a router, okay, from a licensing model standpoint. And then we can manage it for you, which is a SaaS offering called SolarWinds Observability. And there's seamless integration between the two if you're in a transition between on-prem to cloud at some point in between, okay? And encompassing all of that, like the Tesla example that I mentioned, is our vision on making it smarter and autonomous. And we have an excellent ITSM solution as well that can bind all of that together with CMDBs and all those things, okay? But really, these are products, right? But our real journey and vision is to be more of a platform company, so that if you already have made an investment and a choice in a different ITSM provider, you still got to be able to integrate that and not adopt a proprietary and locked into SolarWinds technology, right? So that's the idea. So that's where we are headed, okay? But the first step that we have made extremely simple is a simplification of the licensing models, okay? And to Mr. Kishore's point, the other flexibility that we have is OpEx versus CapEx, right? So it's the same product, same platforms. You have a choice whether you want to have those licenses perpetually or do you want it on a subscription basis? Okay, so.
One more point.
Sure.
Since you talked about Singapore medical thing on the EMR, electronic medical record registration, I think another area which most of the doctors are not technicians, they don't know the technical aspects of it, but they somehow know this is in the market, and they don't look at a lot of biomedical equipments which are there in the hospital environment, especially in the ICU. There is a biomedical engineer who works on it, who looks at the calibration of the different equipment, patient monitor and this. Those are much more important in terms of observability. If you are able to integrate those equipments and have a observability, is what is the mean time of failure for that, and how can I predict those things, I think we can save a lot of patient lives there.
And that's very
It's a
critical
very good
for a
point, sir.
healthcare.
Yeah.
Now, we'll have quick closing comments to wrap up this session from each of you. We'll start with you, Mr. Kishore. When it comes to unified observability, your solution provider should have a wider ecosystem to ensure that these skill sets are readily available. This is a lot of challenge that a lot of organizations are grappling with. How do you solve that challenge, and what do you think is the way forward?
I think manpower dependency is very high when we have a lot of configurations to make. And if we are able to handle that and make a training, the upskilling of the existing employees, I think that's the mode that we should be adopting, rather than looking for a manpower that ups your cost towards the employee cost, and you train further him, and then you're not able to retain him. I think that is the right approach, that we look at our employees, how they can be trained for this new solution across. And is it a quick and faster one with solutions like Coursera or Udemy, or a lot of other there who give a kind of a AR, VR environment, or a kind of a virtual environment where they learn and take. I think Mr. Chakravarti took that topic of how we can look at those things virtually and see that we can create an environment where those can be replicated. And I think that is where you don't end up in the live session, you do it remotely and learn fast.
See, training or capabilities are very important for any IT project. So, trained expertise, even when we decide for any project, say now for observability, we need to see what data volume is there, data quality, expertise, and organization goal. When all three comes together, we should start. But to any project, trained resources or expertise are required, whether in-house or through vendor.
Mr. Chakravarti?
See, obviously, I agree to both these gentlemen. See, resources is important, right? Skills are important because, see, an application, something when you're working on a tool, right? There are expectations that you have from the tool to deliver. You're talking about customer experience. We spoke about employee productivity. We also spoke about ROI. Now, a tool is only as good as you deploy and use it. It will not start working by itself. I mean, I think we have to get out of that. You know, I've got a very good tool, and why is it not giving me some X, Y, Z? That is simply because you have not configured it to do so. Okay. Now, that's point number one. So, point number two is, the capability of that skilled resource. Now, that can be at either side, but it is good to be developing that, ongoing, and having good tax centers available across 24/7, good product SMEs available. See, what are the possibilities? Now, when there are certain standard parameters that we all monitor now, but different organizations, say within the banking also, within a bank will come and say, hey, can I do this on this tool? Now, that's where that skill set comes into play. Because the moment you say no, the customer is already thinking this tool is not good enough. I need to look for something different. Okay, this is not serving my purpose. Now, till the time you are not good enough to understand the capability of the tool and be able to juice it, I don't think you will get anything out of the tool. Yeah, it's very important to have that skill set. Thanks.
Absolutely.
So I think I take this point also. Apart from ease of deployment of tool, I think there has to be a self-help customization. Let's say any changes which we need, and we can just pick and drop and we can start using it. So it should not be we are giving a chain request and there is a process which has to be followed, and every process will take a long bit of cycle. So it's an ease. It should be ease of at least for engineers or at least for a user. Pick and choose and it starts using it. So that's what I can say.
Yeah, like all said already, everyone mentioned that point, but smooth deployment, expertise, and awareness of the capabilities is the most important thing.
Now, while we've been talking about observability here, Arvind, full stack observability is the ultimate goal for every organization, the ultimate promised land. So, what is a good first step towards full stack observability, and how long does it typically take for an organization to get there?
I think, like you said, it's the ultimate goal, right? But also, I think it's a journey. Okay, you can't get to that state overnight, and it has to be built on a solid foundation, right? And then you build from there. Okay. I think the fundamental ingredients everyone talked about: metrics, traces, logs. I think that's a given checkbox. That's a given. That's a capability thing. Okay. Now, from there on, I would say we got to look at the current state, got to look at the future state, and what provides the greatest breadth and depth. Okay? There are, even while speaking to interacting with many of you here, some are born in the cloud companies, don't have a data center, everything in the cloud. Some of the organizations simply cannot afford to, right? So you will be in a hybrid state for a very, very foreseeable future, correct? So what is the breadth and depth of the technology stack that you have that the solution can provide? I think that's a given, right? The second thing is, what is the out-of-the-box value that you get, okay? Does it take an army of engineers to deploy and see value in 12 months? Or are you going to see 80% of what you want within weeks? Okay? So what is the out-of-the-box value that you're going to get? And once you start there, what is the level of flexibility and extensibility that you have? Because there is no observability solution that's built for specific industries. Okay? So you got to look at how open is it, how extensible is it, and in this API-based world, can you leverage APIs? Can you hook into anything? Can you extract any metrics? Can you visualize that? Can you integrate then? Can you then trigger an alert? Can it detect anomalies? Can it then seamlessly integrate with your ITSM solutions and workflows? Right. So all those things, I would say, if you look at from a capability process standpoint, I think that's a starting point. Of course, to get to that full stack observability, you need the differentiator is the intelligence. That's where the AI and the machine learning capabilities come in. So that I would say that's a foundation. Look at the foundation, look at the breadth, depth, extensibility, and out-of-the-box value, and then incrementally build from there. Yeah. So.
Now, at this juncture, I think we will open it up to the audience. Audiences, if you have any questions for our panelists or for Arvind, they would be happy to take any questions from you. Any questions? Yes, can we have a mic to the gentleman?
Good evening, sir. Good discussion. This is Mahesh, an independent software vendor and a consultant. How much depth of network visibility do we have with SolarWinds in terms of paths and IP level, what you call network level information on QoS as well as COS, if it is available? Network visibility predominantly from layer 2 and layer 3 layers.
Okay. So I'm glad you asked that question. Because obviously the origins of SolarWinds is network monitoring. In fact, a lot of the organizations and IT practitioners tend to think that we are a network monitoring company. And we are the #1 worldwide in terms of market share for network monitoring. Okay? So in that sense, we have a rich history. And because of that rich history, we provide very, very in-depth views of that. Okay? Whether it is visualizing traffic flows, like quality of service, like you said. How do you correlate all of that? How do you correlate with the maybe firewall rules, policies? Okay? And of course, the network health, performance, topology, dependencies, all those things. So we have a very, very comprehensive offering for network administrators, network operators in general. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, then with that, I think we will wrap up this panel discussion. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out the time to be with us and to share your insights and perspectives with us on this topic. I would request Arvind to please share a token of appreciation for our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a thunderous round of applause for our panelists?